I mean, first of all, the DOJ's got a lot of nerve, right? Considering the appointees of the current president and how egregiously unqualified they are, right? Let's just start there. Like, you got a lot of nerve questioning any appointments, point blank, period. That's first. Second is that this is the way that it's been played, right? And if you're not going to question the boards of all these big corporations and why they're almost all exclusively white, the same with the CEOs, the same with administrations across the country. If you're not going to question when you see nothing but white folks, then I don't want to hear it when it's somebody else, right? So to me, that's hypocrisy.
The award-winning A Black Executive Perspective podcast presents Pull Up, Speak Up, where meaningful conversations drive progress and every voice makes a difference. So, what's on the table for discussion today?
It's time to show up, speak up, and get real. Welcome to Pull Up, Speak Up, a new series by a Black Executive Perspective podcast, your safe space for raw, unfiltered, and honest discussions on the tough issues many shy away from. I'm your host, Tony Tidbit.
And I'm your co-host, Chris P. Reed. We want to start by giving a shout out to our partners at Code M Magazine, whose mission is saving the Black family by first saving the Black man. We need you to check them out. CodeMMagazine.com. That's 2 M's, CodeMMagazine.com. Check them out.
Definitely check them out. And today, our roundtable will tackle two riveting stories shaking America's foundation. First, we unpack the firestorm surrounding Chicago Mayor Brandon Johnson and his unapologetic approach to hiring Black leaders. The DOJ is circling. Critics cry racism and supporters call it justice. Is this bold representation or a dangerous new form of exclusion? And then second, we pivot to the chaos engine himself. Number 47, Donald Trump, with executive orders flying, institutions under attack, and norms being bulldozed. The question is simple. Is Trump bum rushing the whole damn system? And if so, is anybody going to stop him? We have a fine roundtable. We're going to tie definitely into it.
Absolutely. So let me just give you a quick insight. First of all, we have Miss Iris Ivana Grant, CEO of Genesse Group. And Iris, welcome to Pull Up, Speak Up.
Thank you. It's great to be here again. I'm excited about today's episode.
Absolutely. And then we have Dr. JoJo McManus, Executive Advisor and award-winning author and anti-racism expert. Dr. JoJo, welcome. Pull Up, Speak Up.
Glad to be here.
Cool. And then rounding out our fine panelists, we have Dr. Patrice LeGoy, licensed marriage and family therapist. Dr. LeGoy, welcome to Pull Up, Speak Up.
Thank you for having me.
Awesome. So glad you guys are here. So everybody, we went through the ground rules. You guys all gave a thumbs up that you were here to the ground rules. Pull up, speak up. Let's get started.
Extraordinary images out of Los Angeles tonight. Hundreds of National Guard troops now on the ground, deployed by President Trump, even though state leaders say they didn't ask for them and don't want them there. You see members of the National Guard with weapons, with body shields and tear gas canisters, all as protesters gather for day 3 of demonstrations against federal immigration raids. Late tonight, President Trump not ruling out going even further in the days to come. But California's governor pushing back hard, saying the president's hoping for chaos to justify more crackdowns, telling protesters not to give him what he wants.
All right. So in the wake of what's been going on in L.A., as the protest and the protesters are activating here, how do you guys or what are you inspired to believe, or how do you think this is going to affect things as we move forward? Because this is a big deal that's been hitting the news hard. And for those of you, we're going to start with those of you out on the West Coast and kind of see how you are interpreting it and what have you been hearing on your end. And Dr. Patrice, I'd like to start with you.
Sure. Yes, I am here in Los Angeles and working community mental health. I know a lot of people who are being impacted. I think that what is happening is an escalation that is just going to breed further conflict. I think a lot of people, are rightfully traumatized by seeing people pulled out of car washes, schools, like places where criminals are not hanging out. It's just people trying to get on with their day-to-day lives. And for all of us here, that's awful to see. You know, I'm proud of my fellow Angelenos who are standing up. I do think, though, calling in the National Guard, calling in the Marines, which I read is going to cost $134 million to bring the Marines in today, is not the way that we need to be spending money. It's not the goal to me is not to bring people together, is not to calm things down. It is to fan the flames. So that's the way that I see it from out here.
And Dr. Jojo, you're in proximity there as well. Do you feel like it's something that's going to ultimately impact you, or has it impacted you thus far?
Well, we've got similar protests going on in San Diego. I think, this is all concerning me because it seems like just one more step toward fascism, toward an authoritarian state. And I think, and all of that in support of white supremacist policies to push out Black and brown folks.
And then Iris, let me ask you this. Number one, Dr. Patrice, Dr. LeGoy, Dr. Jojo, thank you for your thoughts. Iris, let me pivot it a little bit differently. So Trump, enacted the National Guard, right? Where typically in these type situations, the states have the authority to deal with anything from a local standpoint, right? And the National Guard is only enacted when the governor of the state says we need help. Okay. In this situation, the governor, Gavin Newsom, didn't ask for help. Mayor Bass didn't ask for help. They had the situation under control, or they were going to control the situation. Now the president just jumps in without nobody asking him, and then brings in the National Guard, and then obviously, as Dr. LeGoy talked about, brings in the Marines. And in this situation, what we're hearing is that it's only making the situation worse, because now you have this army, okay, that's now there, and now people feel riled up further in terms of expressing their First Amendment rights. And look, let's be fair. In every protest, we've seen some criminalization and a whole 9 yards. That's not the majority of the people, but the local authorities they deal with that, right? So what's your thoughts on the president jumping his authority and sending in troops when nobody asked him to do that? And back to what Dr. Jojo was talking about, a way of, in a situation that looks like it can become fascism, because if he can do this here, then guess what? He can do it anytime, because precedent is set. What's your thoughts on that?
I think that everybody has made such a vital point, and what you've said is, for me, it is so critical, because I think it's a test case. I think it is to establish how far he can go and will go, right? And catches everyone off guard, because he acts so immediately, without just cause, without any other guidance or conversation of the normal methodologies that that we would expect our president to do, and following respectfully a chain of command from the mayor to the governor, right? And not seeing that, I think that it will really, really invoke fear and anger that may not be able to be controlled. And when you put your military in a space that they are to engage with hostility in a way that should not be on this soil for American citizens, I do believe that it's a test. And I believe that as far as he can go with this, I think it's just a green light in his mind as to some other opportunities that he may already have in his mind that he's looking forward to. And I do say looking forward to moving towards a level of extreme power and control.
Dr. Jojo, what's your thoughts on that?
I think she hit it right on the head when she's talking about control, because I think this is a situation where the hypocrisy of this administration is very apparent, right? The president today talked about this coming close to insurrection, and the idea of that, considering that we had an insurrection that he has pardoned everybody from, acted like it wasn't an insurrection, I think is highly concerning. And I think that Iris got it right in saying that, putting the military in this situation, it's not fair to the military personnel either, right? This is not what they signed up for. It's not what they're trained for. And this is nowhere near an insurrection. This was peaceful protest. And we're seeing violence, but it's being started, as is often the case, by the government officials.
Let me ask you this, Dr. Patrice. In the idea of accountability, and this seems to be thrown around quite a bit, right? The level of accountability. In the idea that the president has shown that he won't listen to anyone, even when mandated or ordered to do so, but then still has the range to instruct or direct others, and they're being forced to listen to him. How can we reconcile that as a nation where you have someone who can act autonomously and irresponsibly and be negligent in these instances, and everybody turns a blind eye? Or am I overstating that the blind eye is being turned?
I don't think you're overstating it all, unfortunately. And, in addition to acting autonomously, the people that he often does appoint are people who are going to blindly follow him. So several years ago, I was studying the rise of Hitler in Berlin. And this particular thing that we were studying in international psychology was not about the victims of the Holocaust, but it was about the perpetrators. And they took us through at this museum, they took us through all of these perpetrators, regular people, unqualified, but advanced to high levels of power, who then were completely loyal to the person who put them in this position that they know they did not earn. And I'm seeing a lot of that. So when you see people following his orders, you're seeing people who they don't know what they're talking about. They don't have experience. And they're going to follow this guy because they know that there's no other universe in which they would have this power. And so that, to me, we've seen it happen before and we know what happens, and we're still kind of just sitting in here and seeing it happen again. And, in some cases, letting it happen before our eyes. So you do have him just taking all the power he wants, and you have his people who are following it. A lot of times there are people who are just loyal to him because of the position that he put them in.
Absolutely. Go ahead, Chris.
Let me ask this, Tony. Iris, why is that? Because unfortunately, emotionally, when people make those statements and refer to history and things of that nature, we feel as if we're past all that. We're better than those people where we're more informed, communication and all this other stuff. Why is that not as dramatic? Or why do I think that's just a dramatic approach to take, and that's kind of overstating and just not dog whistling, but why are we being called dog whistlers for that type of opinion?
And I think that opinion is spot on, and it's frightening every time I hear someone reference historically, because we know history repeats itself, right? When I hear somebody historically reference someone, wow, it's as off kilter. I don't want to say brilliant genius of how you are able to garner this following, whatever it is, this attraction, this uh, willful, blindful following, or indebtedness that they have to him. When I hear things like that being repeated from what we should have learned lessons in history, it just shows us I think the frailty of humanity. I think the importance of why we are supposed to uplift our educational system in a manner that we are teaching the truth of history, so that we can have some sense of boundary and protections, right, against what could happen again. To forget something, or to think something so far off that it's a fantasy that you repeat it, is a danger. And I think that we are very much in that same place. I think that he is doing a playbook right out of Hitler's playbook. And unfortunately, he didn't do it right the first 4 years because he didn't know exactly how to do it. But then he had another 4 years to garner strength and to garner a band and a source of strategists that were smarter and able and wiser and had history under their belt to be able to have this coalition right now. to have him be able to strategize or have him at least play out the strategies that are being done, and that we are dangerously, I believe, on the cusp of a repeat of history. So I think Dr. Patrice is absolutely right as to the example that's being followed.
Here's the thing, though. Thanks for that. But here's the thing. Let's be fair, though. Let's because number one, nobody in the United States today, nobody knows no history. Okay, just be fair. Those days are gone. I'm just being honest. It's gone. Okay, there's nobody looking at history. They couldn't even tell you what they did 2 weeks ago. Okay, they don't know nothing. Number two, and me and Chris talked about this before. This ain't nothing new. If Jim Jones can get 900 people to sell their possessions, move to Africa and call him God, and then drink cyanide poisoning on his request, you can get anybody to do anything. All right. Once you build up a following and you keep telling these people over and over again, this is this and I'm this and they're doing this against you, and they start believing it. So we're at a place now where, to everyone's point here, to be fair, that the country is going to implode. Okay. And we're not going to be, the United States of America is not going to be destroyed by some foreign enemy. It's going to be destroyed from within. Okay. And that's a fact that we're on a path where this is just going down and down. And we have somebody who's doing it. And to your point, definitely following a playbook, but the majority of the citizens that voted for him have no clue. They're not even interested in learning. They don't want to learn. Like what was my flick? What was my flick with Denzel and remember the Titans? Remember that? Remember my man Petey say he don't want to know. All right, and that people don't want to know. They want he's for me, and that's all that matters, right? So I'm glad to get everybody's thoughts, but here, that's not the only thing that's going on in the United States right now. We have a big thing going on in Chicago. Let's check it out.
Business and Economic Neighborhood Development, the deputy mayor is a Black woman. Department of Planning and Development, it's a Black woman. Infrastructure, deputy mayor is a Black woman. Chief Operations Officer is a Black man. Budget director is a Black woman. Senior advisor is a Black man. Our people hire our people.
A few moments later.
The Justice Department citing that exact moment in this letter to Mayor Johnson today, saying if these kind of hiring decisions are being made for top-level positions in your administration, then it begs the question whether such decisions are also being made for lower-level positions.
So, guys, and obviously you guys haven't slept under a rock, okay? You know, the mayor of Chicago, I guess he was at church, and when you get the Holy Spirit, you start.
He was moved.
You get moved, right? You start talking, right? And you say this and that and the whole 9 yards, right? Now, because of the comments that you just heard, and and obviously who the administration now, right? Because they've, there can't be no DEI, it can't be none of this. So now you hear these comments that he says publicly. And again, I love to hear you guys' thoughts. So now the DOJ is coming after him, saying that he's discriminating against white people, okay, and stuff to that nature. So I'd love to hear your thoughts. Was this more of a matter of optics, or was this a racially conscious thing? Dr. LeGoy, let me hear your thoughts.
Yeah, I mean, I think that it is an interesting concept. There are things that need to happen to prove discrimination, which is different than saying, here's a qualified person, I hired them for this role, or I want my administration to represent the community that we serve. We do that in mental health all the time. We make sure that there are people on staff for the community that we serve, that we represent the neighborhood. I think that is not discrimination. I think that is moving towards making things more equitable where they have not been in the past. And let's be honest, just because, the Trump administration or many other administrations don't say we're hiring mostly white men, that's what's happening. They just might not be announcing it. But if you look around, you can see that a lot of times people hire people who look like them. And sometimes that works for some people and it doesn't work so well for some others of us. So I don't think what I heard, what I was able to hear from the mayor, to me, that wasn't necessarily discrimination, but I think it goes back to what Iris and Jojo were talking about let me see how far I can push things. Let me try to set a new precedent so that the next time I do it, I could say, well, look, in Chicago, this is what I did. And I was allowed to do that. And so now I'm going to do it in these other areas, in these other cities. It's like what's happening in the universities, right? Trying to get someone to not push back and to now say, I've had success in doing this. So that's the bit of it that's pretty scary as well, is these targeted attacks to build a different.
So let me ask you this, Dr. Jojo. Even if it's not discriminatory or illegal, is it an over-rotation in the concept of trying to do a goose and gander type situation? What's good for the goose, deal. And so now he's just playing that same hand from that same deck of cards. But it's an eye for eye type situation as far as I'm concerned. Where do you disagree?
I mean, first of all, the DOJ's got a lot of nerve, right? Considering the appointees of the current president and how egregiously unqualified they are, right? Let's just start there. Like, you got a lot of nerve questioning any appointments, point blank, period. That's first. Second is that this is the way that it's been played, right? And if you're not going to question the boards of all these big corporations and why they're almost all exclusively white, the same with the CEOs, the same with administrations across the country. If you're not going to question when you see nothing but white folks, then I don't want to hear it when it's somebody else, right? So to me, that's hypocrisy. As far as illegality of it, I don't see anything that's not being done everywhere else. So again, I would say, look at precedent. And if you look at other cities and other towns and the appointments that they make, they often look like the people in charge. If you're going to set up a racist, white supremacist system, don't expect everybody else to play by rules that you don't have to play by, right? So when you say it's an overcompensation, that the idea of that, to me, is just grossly overstated. The idea that could be an that could be too much, just one city, right? When the entire country is run that way, right? And in the other direction. So I really think that we have to think about qualifications and whether people are really qualified to do this. And when you look at that administration overall, the statistics of it, the people that have been appointed and hired look broadly like the city. So to me, I'm not going to question, whether that's an overcompensation or not. I don't think that that's relevant right now. I'd rather see some folks that are quality folks that are qualified to do their job at all levels, including the federal.
So
Iris, go ahead, Tony.
I just want to throw this in because I hear you, but let me push back on that a little bit, right? Let me push back on that a little bit. So let's turn the tide a little bit. Let's say he was white, and he said, "My city controller is a white man. My city finance person is a white man. The person in charge of human resources is a white woman. The person in charge of contracts is a white woman." Had that been said, we'd have been screaming, to be fair, right? Let's be fair, right? Let's be fair, right? Regardless of what the circumstances are, we know that I live here in Milford, Connecticut. The majority of people on the city council, man, they all white. I don't know what person. And that goes across most communities, to be fair, right? But had a white person said that, let's be fair, I want to hear your point, Iris, people would have been screaming. What's your thoughts on that?
I think people would be screaming now because we're used to the narrative of now it's tit for tat. Right. I think
it's not tit, but what I'm saying is it's not even tit for tat. If a white mayor, white woman, white man came up and was in the pulpit and started going through and say, I love the people on my team and they represent and they're this and that and they're all white, right? At the end of the day, that's not tit for tat. That's somebody just coming out saying what time it is. And the community would have been up in arms. Do you agree or disagree?
I do, but relevant to the time. right? Because there would have been a time that we would have been like, well, that's the normal, right? That's how it's been. We would have said something, but I don't think that we would have been as ready to throw rocks as we are and as we are prepared to throw rocks. And that's why I really feel I was actually proud of Mayor Johnson, because I think he gave the double down. I think it was a very conscious, intentional statement and projection of this is who my team is and they are qualified. And I think it was a bit of a tit for tat. I think he threw a rock in the water and knew that there was going to be a ripple. And I was very proud of them. I mean, because we're being asked, especially in the philanthropic industry right now, we are being asked to either erase it all because everybody's a DEI hire. So everybody that's Black, whether you're qualified or not, you're a DEI hire, and you should be removed. And so I think it is I think if that had been the opposite, I think we would have stone thrones. But I think we would have thrown them more intensely, because if it's all Black, we automatically know there's going to be a conversation. So I like the double down. And I think people would have screamed that because that's just the environment right now, right? I think 15, 20 years ago, yeah, we would have said something, but it would not have been the scream that we would have if it had been yesterday, that they'd said, oh, my whole team is white. Because we would expect that. Right?
Let me
go ahead, buddy. Go ahead, because and I know JoJo is trying to jump in.
What
I'm trying to wait for my name to be called.
No, jump in, right? Go ahead, Chris, go ahead.
Dr. JoJo, I take this action as Iris has depicted, without using the term, very militant. And I take it as very abrasive, and we tend to kind of play it easy and be cool, as opposed to being so verbose and so, high on the hog at this point to say, yeah, all my people is my people. Like, we're not supposed to be able to say that and walk away. Like, we can't go sit back down like Will Smith. You know what I'm saying? When you slap somebody, you're not going to sit back down and enjoy the rest of the show. So I'm asking you, how the hell did this happen?
You funny, bro. You a funny dude, though.
Tell the truth.
No, you telling the truth, but your analogies are just funny.
So, all right. So for me, this is about the double standard, right? Okay. And Tony, if you think that hasn't been said by white mayors and presidents, they're saying it, and some of it's been caught on tape, right? Or been
look
recorded.
What Nixon said. Look, so you're 100% right. Go ahead.
Yeah. So to think that it's not, been said is not accurate, I don't think. But I think that this really gets us to point at the double standard that exists. Even saying that it's militant, right? We've got a president that's literally bringing the military out to control, right? To control peaceful protesters, right? Which is supposed to be something that we have a right to do. And then that analogy doesn't work. Usually you're right on point, Chris, but we can't talk about militant when we got the military being sent to control us, right? So I think that this is the good part of this is it does highlight the double standard, right? And that white folks can do this all day, but when folks of color, particularly Black folks, do this, now we've got this moral question that we have to address.
Yeah.
So let me ask you this, Dr. Patrice.
Yeah,
I was about to come to you. Yeah. And I was about to come to you, but I'm going to ask you specifically. Mm-hmm. Did we give the secret away because now they're going to be on the lookout and try to block this type of stuff in the future? This is where they change the voting districts and all that kind of stuff once we win something, No,
I think that I am here for it. I appreciate it. I think that it is fine and okay. They're going to do it because they want to do it. You could be quiet as a church mouse, or you could be out there loud and proud, and they're going to still try to find little opportunities. So you might as well be honest about what you're doing. I am definitely here for it. I think that he is not, there's no wrongdoing that he's admitting to. He's saying, I'm being intentional in my hiring practices because I know that these people are often been overlooked. Like Iris made the great point about everyone's a DEI hire. Before that, everyone who was in a good school was affirmative action. People are going to find a reason. Whereas if you really want to think about it, those people are working harder, overcoming more barriers to get to where they are, not fewer. So those are really, the people that you want to have. So I think that the idea that that's militant is not a narrative that we need to internalize. That's on them if that's the way they take it. But I think he's saying, I'm being thoughtful. I'm actually being intentional. I'm not just hiring little Bobbies, down the street because he's my friend's son. I'm hiring the people who worked hard, who are in this community, and who will work hard for this community. So
I'm just saying to the panelists, we have to be fair as we play the game, because regardless of how we think this plays out, they will tiger-proof the course.
Mm-hmm.
Well,
that's the nature of it.
It's not just tiger-proofing. It's one of the fears. Okay, is that, and this is a fear that we've all dealt with, especially in corporate, where we've been a hiring manager or whatever the case may be. The fear is he's going to hire Black people. He's going to bring in, so we don't want to even have him here because he's going to start bringing in other individuals, right? And so that's the fear. Now, I'm not saying you don't do that, right? But I go to Chris's point a little bit. I just think that, in my opinion, and I don't know this to be fair, I just felt when I first said it that the Holy Ghost was running. And he was just, he in a Black church with a lot of Black people, and he's saying what he feels, right? But not recognizing that as being the mayor, this will get out, right? It's no different. Think about when Obama was running for president, okay? What did they try to do? They went and looked at Obama's pastor, okay? And then they found a clip when he was saying, "God damn America," when he was preaching. Right? And they're like, see, you see that? They're going to take over the country. This is Black people. And they tried to use that against him. Or when he known some dude, and this is the hypocrisy that Dr. Jojo talked about. This is part of it, right? That it was some dude that he knew that they said was, and he was a white dude. And they were like, he's a terrorist, right? And they kept trying to, connect the dots on this dude, right? And blah, blah, blah. Even at the debate, Obama, they asked some questions about it, right? Once he won the election, that dude's name just disappeared. You don't even know his name. So it was a ploy to try to, affect mainstream white people in terms of, see, if we elect somebody Black, they're only going to bring in more Black people, or they associate with, the undesirables, and it's going to tear our country down, right? And so that's the mindset. So, but let's see this. Let's see if back to Dr. Jojo's point, let's see if he broke the law.
Now, the nuance in the law is important. You may be shocked, but Brandon Johnson appointing all of those people to those high-level positions that just happen to be Black, that doesn't actually violate the law. Here is Title VII of the Civil Rights Act of 1964. Under definitions, it says the term employee shall not include any person elected to public office in any state or political subdivision of any state by the qualified voters. That's Mayor Johnson. Or any person chosen by such officer, Mayor Johnson, to be on such officer's personal staff or an appointee on the policy-making level. So that was a complicated way of me saying that Mayor Johnson's political appointments cannot violate the civil rights law because they're exempt from the law. So if an all-Black mayor appoints all Black people, or an all-white mayor appoints all white people, it doesn't matter because it wouldn't be a violation of the Civil Rights Act.
So if it's not a violation of the Civil Rights Act, Dr. LeGoy, why is the DOJ after him?
Tony.
I'm asking the question.
This is what
you're looking at me all sideways, and you're like, God damn it, why?
Her response was priceless. That face expression was priceless.
Yes, because this is what he wants to do. Okay, so this is the thought that keeps coming to mind. So you ever read a book and they're describing characters, but you get to certain character and they'll say, "Oh, he was Black," or she was Latina, and then you realize everyone else in the story that you've been reading about up to that point is white. And the only people they're calling out are people who are not white. So like we're talking about status quo. So like all of these things we're talking about, there's a plenty of administrations that are all white, hiring friends and family, and that's just what it is. That's what we've seen. That's what a lot of people are used to. That's what we've come to expect. And this time, because he's saying, hey, I'm going, if not me, then who? Which is a real responsibility people can feel. If not me, then who? And then he's getting all of this heat for it. So he's like, I kind of feel like you might as well do it anyway, because you're going to get the heat for it. And if you don't do it, then who is going to look around and say, you know what? Our administration does not really represent our community, or this is not like an equitable room that I'm sitting in. And so, I really do feel like Trump is targeting them to set a precedent, to say that this is not going to be the status quo. We do not approve of this as the status quo. This is not what we're comfortable with. This is not what we approve of. This is not what we want leadership to look like. And that's why they're doing it. Even if he hadn't said anything, they would have found a reason. So,
Dr. Iris, what's your thoughts? Iris, what's your thoughts on that?
As I'm listening to her, it brought to mind that, we have to remember that all of this is being played out on the world stage. And if for nothing else, everybody that thought perhaps the Black and brown communities were kind of exaggerating and making things up, we're on the side of the ridiculous. Like at this point, every single thing that he does is being played out on the world stage. And if you didn't know, if you thought we were making it up, if you thought we were over exaggerating, if you really are at a level that you can at least open your eyes and pay attention, you're starting to see things kind of add up, and you're starting to think about what you're seeing and what's being done, right? And I think that in a way can run to a benefit to a degree, because usually these kinds of things are done, and they're done in a back room, they're done in a closet. The deals are done, and the DOJ may come after somebody, but it's quiet and it's in the background. Now it's just blatant. It's out front. The administration is emboldened. Their followers are emboldened, and their acts that they're doing, whether it's with a pen or whether it's with a threat, it's hitting everybody's household, right? And it's hitting on a global stage. So I think that you should just go ahead and throw the stone. Throw it out there. I think Mayor Johnson was very aware of what he's doing. And he's a mayor. He knows that everything that he says is going to be checked and balanced and reviewed. And so I think that we either have to do as we're being asked and to take all the words down. I mean, in the philanthropic community, there are 250 words that the president has already stated we need to take down and we need not to use. None of them are relevant to being white. None of them are relevant to being a male. And so you either have to decide to kind of do that or to just stand and say, hey, this is who we are. And the benefit, I think, as Dr. Patrice was talking, I'm like, man, but this is all playing out on a global stage, and it's not just us seeing it in a box or behind a closed door this time. And maybe that will have some impact on when you throw the stone. That stone is now being echoed. The ripple is being echoed.
I think that's such a good point, Iris. I mean, I personally have a lot of family and friends who live outside of the U.S. and they are calling and check, are you okay? Are things okay there? Because they are worried. You're so right. It's such a good point. People are seeing this and they know that this is not normal, that this is not okay. And I think that the interesting thing about your point is that America has definitely sold itself as, that shining city on the hill. We're going to go and liberate these people and free these people. And people are looking at America like, you all had some other stuff that you hadn't really dealt with, huh? Like it's really coming to the forefront. But people around the world are definitely noticing. I get phone calls and text messages regularly from people who are, oh, it doesn't look good. Are you guys moving anytime soon? Those kinds of questions.
Passport ready.
So my question to you though, Dr. JoJo, specifically in this is the law is established by two things classically. It is what a reasonable person would deem reasonable and precedents. And so now that the precedents is starting to change and the flavor of the day is laws schmaws. I don't have to follow the Supreme Court rulings. I don't have to follow this. I don't have to follow that. Precedents is being established in real time. Do you agree with that or you disagree with that? Is this isolated what Trump and his people are doing, or are they establishing a new series of laws or the way we look at things in the United States.
I think we have to back up a little bit with respect to laws, right? The
Okay.
Constitution and the laws that were written initially had nothing to do with precedent or what a reasonable person would think, unless that reasonable person happened to be a white landowning man, right? It was built to support white supremacy and predatory capitalism, right? So the only thing that we're talking about now is how we react to those problematic laws, right? So let's think about it this way, right? We're talking about Chicago, so let's talk about Michael Jordan, right?
Okay.
So when Jordan started using the rules and doing better than everybody else, they got new rules.
Yeah, Jordan rules.
Jordan rules, right?
Yes, sir.
So that's kind of what this situation is. So now you got a mayor that's saying, all right, those are the rules. I can appoint whoever the hell I want. Good.
Right.
Here we go. Right. And he's using the system and the rules and laws that are in place to take it in a different direction. And so now if they want to change the rules, okay. But those rules that a person that's elected by those that are allowed to vote, right? Think about that. Those that are elected by those who are allowed to vote get to appoint whoever they want, right? And that's not a part of the law. That was put in place for a particular reason. And now it's working against those folks. And so now they have a problem with it. Again, it's a matter of the rules don't apply to certain folks, right? Those certain folks still being pretty much the folks that the Constitution and our original laws were written for. So I think we have to think about history, but we've also got to think about, okay, if these are the rules and you've got a group of folks that are saying, all right, these are the rules, we're going to start winning in a different way. Oh, and then the folks that are mad about that want to change them if they've got the power enough. And they still do have more power, right? White, instead of landowners, we'll say billionaires.
Correct,
right?
correct.
And mostly men, mostly Christian, etc. These folks are not liking the way this is going. They may change the rules, right? But hopefully our democracy will stand up and we'll take advantage of the current rules in our democracy, and we'll be able to develop better rules that are more equitable. But time will tell. I'm not as pessimistic as Tony was in the last segment, but I do think that there is a possibility that our standing up will matter.
All right.
So let's do this as we move on. I'm trying to stay in good graces of the algorithm. And obviously, let me, before we jump into the second half of the show, I want to take a moment for you guys to learn a little more about these rabble rousers that's going to get us shut down at the table today. So I'm going to start with you, Dr. Patrice. Tell us a little bit more about who you are and what you do when you're not shaking things up on Pull Up Speak Up.
So I am.
She gonna clutch her pearls like she ain't just say all that stuff. It's all tape.
Wait a minute, hold on, buddy. She looked at me sideways, right? When I was like, "Why you, buddy?" I'm glad I'm not in LA because I probably would have got socked.
I meant every word. Okay, so I am an international psychologist and a licensed marriage and family therapist here in Los Angeles. I mostly study colorism, the psychosocial impact of Eurocentric beauty standards on women of color. And I also am a frequent panelist and provide a lot of expert mental health resources to different publications. And I have a podcast on mental health and our day-to-day lives called Like Minded with Dr. Patrice.
That's what's up. All right, so now let's go to one of the ringleaders, Dr. JoJo McManus. When you're not on here turning over tables and, slapping dominoes down, what do you do in your normal life?
All right, so I'm an educator. I've been in higher ed for 25 plus years. I've been an anti-racist longer than that, doing that kind of work. In higher ed, I've worked my way up from faculty and staff to, administration and been a senior diversity officer. But right now I'm focused on advising leaders in higher ed and in other sectors, particularly around anti-racism and the dreaded diversity, equity, and inclusion. And I've been doing that for 5 or 6 years now. So that's what I'm doing.
And where are you currently located?
In San Diego.
San Diego. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. And then, of course, run an anchor leg. Iris Ivana Grant, tell us a little bit about what you do when you're not doing this.
So I'm the CEO and founder of a company called the Genesi Group. We are a strategic philanthropic company. We build strategies in philanthropy where we fill in the gaps for fundraising campaigns and build ecosystems for cities and communities, by which that include the entrepreneurs, the nonprofits. And so we are that man in the middle between where industry and humanity engage and enact. And so we are excited to be a part of this because it is a part of our humanity when we get a chance to talk to this. And we are in the business of serving humanity.
Cool.
I love it. I love it. So you can see we have a very diverse panel. And the first half has been fascinating. But now we're going to dive into something that I really want to see. All this expertise that's on this round table. I wanted them to roll up their sleeves now, because we're going to dive. I'm going to ask them a question after the next clip, because, our president has, obviously, rely on chaos and disorder, agency takedowns, culture, war declarations. So he reminds me of somebody else.
I seen the future, y'all. And its name is the Carter.
Oh, hold up, Nino. The Carter Apartments, man, that joint is big. What's up?
Yo, baby, we talking about combinating and consolidating. That's what up.
You're not thinking I'm taking over the Carter.
Yeah, we taking over the Carter. We gonna bum rush the whole damn thing. Now just imagine, if the tenants cooperate, oh, it's lovely. I mean, they become loyal customers. They don't? Fuck it, it's like in Beirut. They become living hostages. We will own this fucking city.
So my question is, and I'll start with Dr. Jojo here, is Trump Nino Brown?
Oy.
Is Trump Nino Brown? Is Trump Nino Brown? Go ahead. I want to hear your thoughts.
Trump's a low rent Nino Brown. Trump is, if you know Trump from New York, and I was in New York for a number of years, you know that Trump is more about scamming, and he really doesn't know how to run a business. I think Nino Brown knew better how to run a business. Not to glorify Nino Brown, but just saying.
Never thought you'd be advocating for Nino Brown. This is what we do here.
No. I think, honestly, we've got a person in office, and I'm not going to claim him as my president. You can go ahead and do that, Tony, but I'm not doing that. This guy is somebody that has learned from the worst of, right? The worst of the mafia, the worst of politics, the worst of business, right? And he's bringing that with him and, trying to be like a boss, like a mafia boss, and just bully his way, through this. And I think that in this second term, the problem isn't that he's changed and become more this or that. He's been a mess, right? He's the same mess. What has happened is that Republicans who have this extremist, white supremacist, authoritarian bend have attached themselves. And that's where we get Project 2025, which is what's happening, right? I'm one of those folks that read it. Yes. And this is exactly what they talked about in there. It was very detailed. It was done by very smart folks. That doesn't mean they're good, but they're plenty smart. And they're trying to reinforce the white supremacist system and all of those other divisive bigotries in order to not only maintain power, but to grow power for that same group that wrote the original laws, back to what Chris was talking about before, right? So I think that I don't want to give Trump, credit for having built this, because he's just along for the ride. He's the puppet.
So let me restate the question. I'm gonna say it again, okay? And I want you to focus on one word of what we just saw in the clip. And obviously, we can dive into it where Nino wanted to take over the Carter, okay? And he stated, look, either they'll be great customers or they'll be lived-in hostages, okay? And he said, we're going to bum rush the whole damn thing. So when we start looking at Trump's, how he came into office this time and what he started doing, I'm going to ask you guys this question again after this clip.
We gonna bum rush the whole damn thing.
It's been a whirlwind since President Trump was sworn in.
Trump, do solemnly swear that I will faithfully execute.
Since January 20th, we have seen an unusual amount of executive orders. He has signed more than 80 executive orders. Let's compare that to Joe Biden. Biden signed more than 160, but that was during his whole 4 years in office. Those executive orders cover everything from continuing to build the wall at the southern border, also policies that people are labeling wokeness, ending those, like DEI, and declaring there is only two sexes, and designating English as the official language. He's going to abolish the Department of Education. The strategy has been flood the zone, and it's leaving Democrats and even some Republicans scrambling. There is pushback. There have been more than 100 lawsuits filed all across the country. Trump promised he'd shake things up. He certainly has.
So I'm going to ask you the question again. All right? When he said, Nino said, I'm going to bum rush the whole damn thing. So Dr. LeGoy, is Trump Nino Brown?
Trump is too unfocused and petty and not strategic enough to be a kingpin. That is a lot of work. It requires a lot of strategy and organization, and he is not that person. But he has people, as Jojo mentioned, he has people who they have made this their life's work to undermine any other group getting ahead, to try to claw their way back to, the early days of the United States, and it's working. I think that the bum rushing part, though, feels right. I feel there's so many things happening every single day. You can't possibly keep up and maintain your mental health. You cannot do both. And the other bit that also we know that, you can learn from history is happening is that there's so many things where you're like, is this true? Is this true? And you don't trust anything. So I can't even get any joy out of this Elon and Trump breakup, because I'm like, can I trust it? Is it a distraction tactic? Because I don't trust them. I don't trust anything that happens here. And I know that is a strategy. So I think Trump himself is not, Nino, but I think that this administration feels like it.
So let me put it this way and put it to the numbers, because I know you're a big numbers person, Iris. Biden signed 40 executive orders per year. Trump has signed 80 in 6 months. So if we stay on this continuum, it's going to be an unprecedented number, but not all are impactful to me or to you. Some of them are penny ante, and they're a waste of time and resources as far as I'm concerned. But any idea, like Tony was saying, of bum rushing or flooding the zone is what the person said on the recording. Is that something where it's going to diminish or distract us to where we don't place value in these executive orders anymore? Is it so over inundating the market that we are not even paying attention to these things? And should there be somebody that's at the helm saying, wait a second, I need to look at this more closely before we just let this go on, because it's gotten out of control already?
And let me just add to that, Iris, before you jump in. That's just the executive orders.
Yes.
Getting rid of, you had Doge, getting rid of the Department of Education. We can just go on and on. So that shock and awe strategy, again, we gonna bum rush the whole damn thing, where they're not gonna even be able to push back, because like Dr. LeGoy just got finished saying, they got so many things coming. Executive order is just one thing. Okay, now we got Marines in LA. All right, we got South Africans coming over and talking about black people killing South African farmers. We got he just put a blockade on foreign people coming to the country. And if you look at the countries that's picked out, they're all people of color. They're none in Europe. All right. So think about, and Chris said 6 months. It ain't even been 6 months. Yeah. All right. I mean, that's in a couple of weeks. Yes, this is 4 years of stuff that most presidents would do over 4 years. We've had this less than 6 months. So I'll ask the question again. Is he bum rushing the whole damn thing?
Leading the witness. He leading the witness, Iris.
Dr. JoJo started shaking his head like, are you kidding me?
Man, can we go watch this movie again?
I already told you that part.
I need to go back and check it out as soon as we're finished here. I need to pull that up. But
you guys ain't seen New Jack City?
Yeah, but I need a refresher.
You making it so relevant now. I need to go watch Schindler's List and this now.
It is relevant. But go ahead, Iris. Then I want to hear from Dr. Jojo after.
I think everybody's points are spot on, because there's a piece that can be taken from everything. And I think that the backdoor conversation did happen. I think that the bum rush is exactly what it is, and it is hitting every space that they can. It's just like throwing paint at the wall, and just making sure whatever sticks. I don't even care what sticks, as long as something sticks, right? And then I'm throwing it with one hand and I'm throwing it another hand, and so it's, to me, to exhaust the people. You can't have that many lawsuits happen and really get results. You can't get an answer. You can't get a stop button. You can't remember the what was the staples that used to have the red button? The easy button. You can't hit the button enough, right? Because so many things are being thrown at you. I hope that eventually that works out to be to their deficit, but as far as everybody that I know, and I'm usually like a news junkie, I've even had moments where I'm exhausted, right? Because by the time you try to navigate it professionally and then personally, and then just trying to feel for a community where an urgency is happening, it really is a bum rush. And I don't think that it's his brain that's doing it. I think that he's the kid in the candy store and they're letting him do it. And that's how they kind of appease him. That's where you get all the little petty stuff at, because he's petty. You know, Dr. Jojo talked about New York. I'm a native New Yorker. So I remember very much the Trump University and the whole, it was like a scam. I don't think those cases ever were resolved. People never got their money. So I think it's the same thing now where there's just throwing paint at the wall. And I think it's unfortunate because it does diminish the power of the president being able to have an executive order. Because right now, I even feel like, okay, he signed something else. Like that's his way to get around everything to crush the system. So I think that you are right in kind of pointing that out but as everyone else has had, and the fellow panelist here, you know, he's not the smart one doing that. And so if he's got a team, maybe his team is not exhausted, but the American people in the world most certainly are hitting a point of fatigue.
Dr. Jojo?
Yeah, I think I would push back a little bit on the idea that this has been successful, though, right?
Oh, I'm not saying it's successful. I'm just saying it's been overwhelming. That's all.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. We're all going to need Dr. Patrice's help.
I'm booked. I can't take any more people. I'm telling you.
Cyber hugs. I'll take cyber hugs.
I'm full.
I'm negotiating down.
I wish I was joking.
No, but I it's not successful. I totally agree with that, but it's overwhelming, right? In a short 6 months. But go ahead, Dr. Jojo.
No, let me say this though. Yeah. Dr. Jojo, the intention and the execution has been successful. The results may not be successful for the American people because we don't deserve this shit. But the intention and the playbook and the propaganda, that is all being run successful to them. These are a bunch of check mark. Yep, did it. The muzzle fire that Steve Bannon talked about, that's all being played out accordingly. So I will push back in that regard and say to them, in their twisted mind or in their scape of what they're trying to accomplish, they right on schedule.
Mm-hmm. I would say that the part that's been successful is around the culture wars. Right. Mm-hmm. So they're making progress in the wrong direction around that. And a lot of people are just accepting all of these things. Although last I checked, it was about 93% of the lawsuits against the Trump administration have been successful. Right. In higher education, the National Association of Diversity Officers in Higher Ed, the American Association of University Professors, there's a number of organizations that have been very successful in winning these lawsuits. But in the popular understanding, we're hearing people say, "Oh, DEI is dead," for example, right? And of course, these are folks that can't tell you what the DE or I really stand for, right? Because they've demonized the acronym, right? Because when you say diversity, equity, and inclusion, it's a little harder to say I'm against that, right? And as somebody that's been around in the work for a long time, I know that I was in the rooms when we were talking about, all right, now what are we going to call it? Because they demonized the last thing. And diversity, equity, inclusion, and justice were what we came up with. It was like, okay, well, they can't demonize these things. These are who's against equity, who's against justice, right? But again, the other side of this may be awful, but they're not dumb, and they've created this acronym and said, "Oh, this is what we're against." And so you have regular folks thinking DEI is dead, right? It's not. We will win. We will adjust, and we will continue to work toward the same goals that the abolitionists had and the civil rights workers had. It's the same work, right? So I think that what we have to keep our eyes on is what is actually happening and what has been successful legally, what has been successful culturally, and then working to try to address those things directly. But it's going to take some patience to wait for these things to get through the courts, and to figure out what path we have to take to continue working toward the goals of diversity, equity, and inclusion. And in these other things with women's rights and the abortion, all these other things that they're throwing at the wall, right? As you said earlier, it does give us this sense of like, oh my God, there's nothing we can do, but there is. But at the same time, and this was alluded to already, people like Trump, these politicians, most of them are not actually driven by any particular ethical compass or moral compass. Right?
Correct.
They're driven by who's paying them.
Correct.
Literally and through the elections, and who's getting them more power and more power. So until the system is changed, which will take us standing up, we're going to deal with a lot of people like Trump, and we have for a long time. This whole party is just saying, okay, I'm still getting paid, I'm still getting elected, and they're going along with what they absolutely know. And speaking of recordings, though, folks, there's been recordings of Republicans that are very clear. They know that Trump is a hot mess. Mm-hmm. They know that, and they're willing to go along just to stay in power, right? So until that changes, until this puppetry changes in politics, then we're going to have to deal with this for a long time.
Let me ask this as go to somebody who's going to jump in, but let me ask this question. Final question for me. And I'm going to piggyback what you were just saying, Dr. JoJo. Do you guys, and I want to hear from everybody, do you guys believe that what's happening in LA and San Diego and in Austin and Dallas, and we even had something here in Connecticut just over the last couple of days, do you guys think this is a spark of people coming together and finally starting to push back? Or do you think this is just a moment in time and there may be something else that comes up over the next month, 6 months, year, that'll be something that will galvanize everyone to start to your point, Dr. JoJo, of not just accepting the status quo and not like Nino said, they'll be lived in hostages, right? Because to be fair, when you're overwhelmed, you become a lived in hostage, all right? Because you think there's nothing you can do. But do you think now, just based on what's happening over the last couple of days, is this the turning point of people pushing back? Iris, let me hear from you first.
I think that's a really interesting question. I would like to say yes, because I think culturally, a lot of people are being impacted. A lot of people are being impacted. They didn't think that they would be impacted on what's happening. I do know, as African American women, I say quite often, I am not my grandmother's people. So I do believe that we have a different level of fight. And stick.
So real quick, when you say you're not your grandmother's people, like, what do you mean?
I think that this generation will fight a little different. That will fight. We've learned to progress from where historically, in my grandmother's generation, how they fought, right, and how they fought in the 40s and the 50s and the 60s. I think that we have a very different mindset. We will throw a rock, and I think that the other communities, our Latino brothers and sisters, and just naming them, that even indigenous families, I'm hearing a rumble philanthropically, right, on the ground. And so they are kind of saying, we are the same, we are here, and who's with us. And I think I hear that with a very different tone, and I don't know that things would change right away, but at some point I do believe that there is going to be I don't want to use the word uprising, but I think that there is going to be some pushback, and the things that are happening are going to work for the people in terms of the people galvanizing differently together. and even on a global stage, right? Because things are being seen differently, and you may have a playbook that has historical context, but we're not the same people. And so it is my hope that we will become a community, and that community is going to be extremely diverse, and it is going to be that common cause and that common fight that allows us to see that we have more in common than we do in separate. So that is my hope, and that is my expectation. And I don't think that it's going to come easy either. I don't think it's going to come without a military pushback or without some type of unfortunate situation to make the people collectively unify.
Dr. LeGoy?
Yes, I mean, I think that I would say that it is both a spark and there will be other things that people will have to protest against. You know, I think that this is one thing that maybe it is helpful for people to see everyone coming together and saying this is not okay, like we're not going to allow this to happen in our community. And I think much like what's happening in the news and the executive orders, there will be more things, and that we'll have to decide to do this again. You know, Iris, I really liked the point you made about how this generation does things differently, right? Like there's still protests. There were protests before. There were boycotts. People are still boycotting. We're still boycotting different companies, and using technology to make sure that that there are other witnesses. So it's not just the story you heard from your grandparents. It's everyone around the world can see this happening in real time. Yes. And that is where, you know, we have to call on people to witness the things that are happening and to be moved by people and their stories and say, like, we're not going to allow this. Like, all of us are not going to allow this, so that, you know, we're not fighting alone, you know, in different cities or even as Americans. And I really appreciate that. Like, they're not afraid to, you know, air out the US's dirty laundry, you know, and that's really what we need right now.
Dr. JoJo.
Yeah, so I think about protests, right? And, you know, for a long time, protests have become less effective. And I think it was Stokely Carmichael, right? He told us that the effectiveness, and I wish I had the quote in front of me, but he said that the effectiveness of protest really relies on the ethics of those in power, right? That they have to have some moral compass that tells them that they've got to change direction, right? And so that's concerning, right? Because the media chooses not to spend much time showing protests. There's been massive protests, massive, during this administration and during 45, right? Massive global protests. But it doesn't carry as many news cycles. So it's not having as much impact as some of the economic boycotts, right? I talk about who's going to be the Targets and the Costcos in higher education, right? Because they found out real quick, because you can find out who's not coming to shop at your store right away, right? And Target messed up, right?
Yes, they did.
And they found out, and now they're begging folks to come back. So they found out really quickly. In higher ed, it's at least a year cycle before you find out who's applying and enrolling. And I think the same is true in politics. It's a couple of years at least before you really find out. So I think we have to really respect the fact that there are these changes in how we protest. Younger people are getting very creative. But at the same time, we have to listen, and we have to hold the media accountable to show us what's happening, not just here, but around the world, which our news is terrible at showing us what's going on in the world. You know, I also have people all over the planet, and, you know, it's embarrassing when I talk to them and I don't know what's going on, right? Because the media that we get, we have to seek it out. We just don't see what's happening.
So true.
But there have been protests around the world against 47, against this administration, that just aren't being shown. So I think we've got to be creative and push past the media to get to folks, to get people to understand what's happening and how it impacts all of us, and all of us in this country and around the world. This is having global impact. You know, it's not just about, who are we letting into this country? Not everybody wants to get here, right? That's not the biggest issue. There are global issues with respect to capitalism and the way that the United States operates. The tariffs are bringing that up. There's a lot of things that are happening to protest what's happening in this country. globally and nationally. And I think we've got to keep pushing and figuring out what it is that we can do to change the way the narrative is told. And I want to give credit to all those that are out there protesting, all those that are still doing great work within the DEI and other fields that are protecting civil and human rights. Because I think that this is a group of folks that we've dehumanized by turning them into an acronym. We have to say, we have to appreciate it and get behind them if we hope to get to a point where we actually see human rights and civil rights valued globally.
That's what's up, man. It's a lot, and unfortunately, I think my exhaustion comes from the lack of good faith negotiations and the idea that it used to be a situation where once it hit the legal system and the courts deemed something either good, bad, or indifferent, then people respected the court system. And now there's such a lack of respect for the court system from the people who should be mature enough to abide by these things, that I believe that it's a war of attrition at this point in time. And some of the things that you guys are talking about, I think that they believe they can just wait us out and that we'll get tired of protesting and tired of complaining. And they will still be there with their same saber rattling, dog whistling tactics and topics. And they will outlast the other ones. The 1%ers are built for the long haul. And I just hope that this is an optimistic panel that we have today. You've said some things that are very encouraging. I just hope I'm around to see it come to fruition, because from where I sit, it is not looking like we're punching back to stay in the fight at the rate in which it's going. And if it goes to the card, I don't think we'll get the decision.
Can I push back on it a little bit?
Give me that.
Can I just say something?
Yeah.
I'm not betting on the people that have the power right now, right?
Okay.
I'm betting on the people that have overcome for generation after generation for hundreds of years. I'm betting on Black folks. I'm betting on Asian folks that have come here and struggled and dealt with, camps and all that. I'm betting on the folks that have overcome and continue to resist and to progress, to become mayor and say, let's play by your rules and I'm gonna do it different. And I'm betting on the folks that have been oppressed and who have persisted. Because at the end of the day, the people that are now trying to change the rules to try to oppress even more and trying to hold on to what they can of white supremacy, those folks have been walked to the front of the line for a long time, right? I'm betting on the people that had to fight.
Piggybacking on Dr. JoJo was saying that, hey, he's behind the people that always show up. Because let's be fair.
I like that.
Let's be real fair, though, right? Forget my metaphor. But let's be fair. We do overcome. We have overcome. We are chameleons. We can adjust to anything we do it all the time. And back to your grandmother quote, right? And yeah, we may fight differently, but they fought. Mm-hmm. And then her grandmother fought. And then this and that. I mean, you think about it for a second. And this is what me and Chris talks about a lot, is that, after the Civil War, when Black people, after the 13th Amendment, when Black people became free, they were like, let bygones be bygones, and we just let us do our thing, and we'll be okay. And they was. All right? If you look at history, and you look at Wilmington, and you look at Black people, 10, 20, 30 years was rising, right? That was enslaved for centuries, in 10, 20, 30 years. But every time we rise, they come right at us with something different. Jim Crow, all these things, Ku Klux Klan, change the laws. You can't vote. But no matter what, we continue to push forward, right? We have people that are Black billionaires. So I hear, look, I'm like Chris in a way, not that I don't believe in our ability to push back and fight. I'm talking about there's a segment of our population that's gone. Okay, those people that follow 47, they're gone. Okay, because they're now in a cult. Okay, so those people you can't count on. You might get a couple. All right, but at the end of the day, those people gone. All right, so if anything's going to change, it's going to be changing with the other people. all right, that needs to come together and unify our power together to make a big difference. But I appreciate everyone unifying your power today on Pull Up, Speak Up. I know you didn't like the roach thing, but it's totally fine. I might cut it out, but it's okay. So I want to thank Dr. Patrice LeGoy, Iris Ivana Grant, and Dr. JoJo McManus, sharing your perspectives so we can all learn from one another. I think it's now time for
Tony's Tidbit.
And so the tidbit today: equity isn't about convenience or optics. It requires confronting uncomfortable truths about history, systems, and privilege. When we avoid discomfort, we delay justice. Real equity forces us to make hard decisions, not just symbolic gestures. And you heard a lot of this today from our roundtable.
Absolutely. I also want to echo that thank you to you guys for extending your time, talent, and treasure to us today. And it's been well received, and I definitely learned something to appreciate it. But we want to remind you to check out other things that we have on the platform. One of them being Need to Know with Dr. Nasinga Burton. Each week, Need to Know segment with Dr. Nasinga Burton brings pivotal and crucial and topical insights on our community and our world. Make sure you check her out. She's a powerhouse, wonderful, dynamic person, another doctor that we have in tow, and you don't want to miss it.
Buddy, you know what? The next Pull Up, Speak Up, we're going to have all three doctors on. Nothing against you. It's going to be called the doctors, all right? And we're going to ask them to diagnose and prescribe.
Absolutely.
On America's ills and what they feel. I'm not joking. We're going to do the doctors, right? So you guys down with that, Dr. LeGoy, Dr. McManus? You know, Iris, you always on part of it, right? But we're going to have Dr. Nasinga Burton, and we're going to, trust me, I'm going to reach out to you guys. We're going to make that happen. But don't forget to check out the next Black Executive Perspective podcast, where we have those hardcore conversations, powerful insights on issues that matter most. It's not just a discussion, it's a movement. Don't miss your chance to tune in, be inspired, and join the conversation.
And then we also want to make sure that we remind you to incorporate LESS. You know, our call to action and our goal is to eliminate all forms of discrimination. And to achieve this, we're asking you to embrace LESS. The L stands for learn. Learn to educate yourself about racial and cultural nuances wherever you can get that information. Dr. JoJo said, it's a lot of information out there. You have a responsibility to go and gather that to make sure that you're doing what's right by you and yours.
Absolutely. And then after you learn, you have the letter E, which stands for empathy. Now, since you've learned about your colleagues and other racial groups, now you should be more empathetic because you can now put yourself in their shoes.
And the first S stands for share. Share your insights and enlighten others. You can do so internationally, like Dr. Patrice LeGoy. You can do so locally, like me, or however you can. Make sure that you share the good news with whomever you have at your disposal.
Absolutely. And the final S is stop. We want you to actively stop discrimination as it walks in your path. So as my sister down in Atlanta, Iris Ivana Grant spoke about, as my brother in San Diego, Dr. JoJo spoke about, and as my sister in LA, Dr. LeGoy talked about, you want to stop discrimination as it comes up. So if Aunt Jenny or Uncle Joe says something inappropriate at the Sunday dinner table, you say, and this is part of being anti-racist, you say, Aunt Jenny, Uncle Joe, we don't believe that, we don't say that, and you stop it right there. So if everyone can incorporate less, LESS, we'll build a more fair, more understanding world, and we all will see the change that we want to see, because less will become more.
I love these pull-up speak-ups because the timeliness and the criticality to information that we have, and our panelists coming in and giving their perspectives. But make sure you tune in to all of our episodes that we have on the platform. A lot of great things are being dispensed there, and we want to make sure that you get access to those things. So also go to the website, sign up for the newsletter, leave us reviews, give us ideas, information, help us grow in that regard to reach you where you are. Subscribe, and make sure that you check us out. Tony, where can they find us?
My friend, they can find a Black Executive Perspective podcast on YouTube, Apple, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts. And you can follow us on our social channels of Instagram, LinkedIn, X, TikTok, YouTube, Facebook at A Black Exec. For our fabulous roundtable, Iris Ivana Grant, Dr. Patrice LeGoy, and my man, the anti-racist, Dr. Jojo McManus in San Diego. We want to thank them for being here. For my boy down in Dallas, the co-host with the most, my man, Chris P. Reed. I'm Tony Tidbit. We talked about it. We laughed about it. We fought about it. We're still going to strive about it. And we're definitely going to thrive about it. We love you. And guess what? We're out.
A Black Executive Perspective.